The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board was instrumental in the passing of the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, and now we're working hard to ensure members are ready to comply with the new rules. One of the most important changes is the introduction of designated representation. Here's what TREB members need to know. Under TRESA, there are two forms of representation that are permitted: brokerage representation and designated representation. Realtors must understand the duties and obligations owed to clients under both formats and how those duties may change under multiple representation when using either the designated representation or brokerage representation model. Under brokerage representation, the brokerage and all its agents are bound by the same duties to the client, including representing the client's best interests. Under designated representation, only the designated representatives identified in the agreement are responsible for representing the best interests of the client. Clients, however, remain able to receive services from all realtors at the brokerage under this model. Practically speaking, designated representation permits a brokerage with multiple clients in the same trade to designate a different realtor to fully represent and advocate for each client in a trade without the limitations of multiple representation. Although the law permits realtors to switch between brokerage or designated representation, it is likely that your brokerage policy will dictate whether you will use brokerage representation or designated representation with your clients. Realtors should consult with the broker of record to ensure they understand their brokerage policy regarding representation agreements. So, how does designated representation work in practice? Let's use an example of someone selling their home. David is a realtor with ABC Realty, and he enters into a listing agreement with Sylvia, who owns a property at 123 Main Street. Sylvia, as part of the listing agreement she signs, appoints David as her designated representative for the sale of her property at 123 Main Street. Olivia, who is also a realtor with ABC Realty, enters into a buyer representation agreement with Fatima. Under the terms of the BRA, Fatima appoints Olivia as her designated representative. Olivia shows Fatima David's listing at 123 Main Street, and Fatima decides to make an offer on the property. In this example, is ABC Realty in multiple representation? The answer is no. Both David and Olivia are designated representatives under the terms of their representation agreements. As a result, they can provide both advice and advocacy to Sylvia, the seller, and Fatima, the buyer. If, for example, Fatima asks Olivia what she should offer on the property, Olivia would be able to offer her opinions and advice. This is something that Olivia would not be allowed to do under the brokerage representation model. If under this example, representation was with ABC Realty, the brokerage, instead of designated to David or Olivia, then the transaction would have moved into multiple representation, and the brokerage would only be able to provide limited services to the clients. For example, Olivia would not be able to answer the buyer's question about what she should offer. In multiple representation, there is a conflict of interest since the clients have competing interests. With the introduction of designated representation, realtors should take extra precautions in protecting and maintaining client confidentiality. For example, realtors should refrain from having telephone or other conversations in open-air office settings that might reveal important details about their clients to other agents inside your brokerage. So to summarize, under TRESA, there are now two forms of representation: designated and brokerage. Under brokerage representation, the brokerage and all its agents are bound by the same duties to the client, including always working in the client's best interests. Under designated representation, only the designated representatives identified in the agreement are responsible for representing the best interests of the client. Designated representation permits a brokerage with multiple clients in the same trade to designate a different realtor to fully represent and advocate for each client in a trade, without the limitations of multiple representation. And realtors should take extra precautions to protect client confidentiality in situations where their brokerage is practicing designated representation. Buying or selling a home is the single largest financial decision most consumers will ever make, and that's why TREB has fought for higher professional standards and better consumer protection under TRESA. Now that the legislation has passed, we're working hard to make sure our members are ready to provide great service and support to GTA homebuyers, sellers, and renters. Visit the Tressa Hub on the Trev member homepage for more information.